In this question, I'm going to deal with getting the final payment. There's a few other things that have to happen first just to show the bigger picture of the question. So we are going to calculate in the PV and then only the final payment, but I'll go quite quickly through the basics that I've already covered in other videos. Okay, so if Bob borrows 500,000 Rand from a bank and repays the loan by means of monthly payments, starting 1 month after, that is normal, so I don't have to worry about N at this point. I'm trying to separate out all the different issues into different examples that we're not dealing with them all compacted into one. So that's normal. Interest is 18% compounded monthly, so that's all fine. Okay, how many payments is a critical question to ask before we figure out what the final payment would be. So I have substituted into the formula here, and the thing that is the variable that I'm going to now solve for is the n, which means I'm going to be using logs. Okay, so my process here will be to take the 500,000, times it by the 0,18 over 12, divide it by the 8,000, and then subtract 1 and eventually put it into log form. I'm going to speed through those first processes and then take you through the logs that come right at the end. So this is what I arrive at before I need to put it into log forms. I've got a negative equals a negative, but we know we can't put negatives into logs anyway. So then I'm going to have n, or it'll be negative n, but what I'm saying is we can't put negative numbers into the logs on the calculator, and I'm going to have that is log, the base is the same as the other base. I just converted it to a common fraction so that you can see it done one other way. Okay, then this gives me a negative answer, this thing, therefore n will give me the positive. I'm going to write out everything and then show you what happens after there. So I've got 186, comma, writing everything 222, 1025, and when you are asked for the final payment, this is critical. Okay, so this is used to calculate the final payment, which we'll get to in the third question. We're going to just use the decimal, so not the 186, but the stuff that's left over, because that 2221025 represents the amount of time that is left after you've paid 186 payments. So how long is the savings period? This is not a trick question. It is clearly 187 months. It has to round up. Okay, it's comma 2, which is a useful example to use. But I have to round up because in 186 payments, I haven't paid off this loan. So it has to go to 187. The issue now is that the 187th payment is going to be less than all of the other ones. And all of the other ones we got were 8,000. We were told that up front. So to get the final payment, we're going to calculate the balance outstanding at 186 months. By the way, there are other ways of doing this. I find this the most simple to remember and the easiest to actually do as well. It doesn't involve too much algebra, whereas some of the others get very convoluted. Okay, but the trick here is that my balance outstanding has an end value of the amount that is left to pay. Remember that with balance outstanding? And this amount here, this 0,2 and so on, that is the amount of time that is left. Okay, that is the amount of months that's left to pay, and it's not a whole month. It's not, and that's the trick to this one. Okay, so I'm going to have my 8,000 and plug everything in, and keeping the same rules for balance outstanding, the amount of time left to pay, so the number of payments that have not yet been made, it's technically 1, right? But it's not a whole other 8,000 Rand. It's whatever is represented by this amount of time. So I'm putting that full decimal in over there, and then I'm going to plug that into the calculator and get the balance outstanding. Okay, go carefully. What you end up with is 1,760 Rand, and now I'm going to put in every single decimal place as well. Okay, am I done? Well, no. Because remember that these are paid not in advance. These are paid at the end of the month. So what we need to understand is at the end of the month, this amount of money still needs to have a month's worth of interest. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to grow for one last month, because I'm not growing 8,000 Rand, I'm just growing the bit that is left. Just the balance outstanding needs one more month's worth of interest, and then I'll know what the final payment at the end of the loan is supposed to be. So my second step to getting the final payment is to add 1 month's worth of interest to that amount that I just calculated as the balance outstanding. Okay, how do I do that? Just ordinary compound interest. Okay, so it's going to be 1 plus the interest rate, and then remember what I'm adding is just 1 month's worth of interest. Okay, which gives me 1787 and 12 cents, and this amount here, that is my final payment, which is obviously less than the 8,000. In this question, I want to deal with something that's happening at the moment of making these videos, which is that people are running out of money because of the lockdown in South Africa, and the banks are sending out information. And I got an email about a week or two ago stating that depending on me satisfying certain terms and conditions, I would be allowed to take a 3-month payment gap on my home loan. Okay, which seems like a really kind offer, doesn't it? I'd like to show you the numerical and financial implications if I take that gap. And I think it's important for you to see what happens in the real world when it comes to money, when it comes to what happens when we don't pay as regularly as the original loan agreement tells us we should. Okay, so I've invented a fictitious situation. They were handing out 30-year mortgages in 2008 because we had an economic slump, and the prices had gone really high for properties. No one could afford a 20-year mortgage, so they did these 30-year ones. So I'm taking a relatively realistic situation. Prime was also quite low, so I'm looking at 9%. Okay, so this could be a realistic situation that someone could be in right now. Bob takes out a 30-year mortgage loan in March 2008. 9% per annum, 500,000 Rand flat. 12 years later, so that's where we are right now. In March 2020, he loses income because his business is shut down temporarily owing to the COVID-19 lockdown. The bank offers him a payment break. I've used air quotes or quotation marks on purpose here because it makes it sound a lot better than it is. Okay, which he takes. He then has 2 options. And this is what I've been talking about in previous videos, where you look at whether you gain time or whether you gain money. Option 1, you increase your monthly repayments afterwards, after the 3-month payment break, and then you can keep the period of the loan to 30 years. Or you can extend the period of the loan, so this is now more time, okay, so that the repayments stay the same. So it really depends on a person's situation whether they're able to save money or save time. Okay, so just to get our heads around this, let's see what the repayment on a little property like that would be before anything funny happens, before there's a payment break, before lockdown. Okay, so there's nothing special about this calculation. The 360 comes from 30 years times 12, and there was no extra information as to when the payments were happening, and when there's nothing told, we can assume that they start happening 1 month after the granting of the loan. Okay, so I'm solving for x. I'm just going to talk through the steps and then give you the answer. Okay, so I'm taking my 500,000, I'm multiplying by the 0.09. I'm then going to divide by this whole big bracket here. I can do that in multiple steps if I want to, but if you're at a position now where you're able to save time by not doing that, then please do. We know that time is really important in a maths exam. Okay, so Bob is paying off 4,023 Rand 11 before lockdown. Okay, here comes the bit that's interesting. What is the balance outstanding on the loan after exactly 12 years of payment? Okay, so I've made it easy. I've made it March to March, exactly 12 years. Okay, so the first thing I want to know is balance outstanding. Remember, what I'm supposed to do there is I'm supposed to figure out how many months are left to pay. Okay, and what that is the 360 months we started with. okay, minus all the ones he's paid. He's paid exactly 12 years worth. 12 times 12 is 144. So what we are left with is 216 months left to pay. So my balance outstanding is going to go that way. I'm going to put everything in with the payment I just calculated. That's this 4,023.11, and I'm going to put it into the PV formula and figure out what's left to pay when there's 12 years already been paid. You can do this with me if you like. Check my substitution, pause the video when you want to do your own steps, and then see if you're typing into the calculator correctly. Okay, so what kind of number am I expecting here? Well, borrowed 500,000 Rand, only been paying off for a little bit, so it has to be less than 500,000, but it's actually surprisingly high. It's 429,615 and 27 cents. What I failed to write on these questions is that we're going to round off as we go to 2 decimal places. It's actually implicit because the questions are labeled A, B, C, D, and E to follow. And that means that your final answer at the end of a question is then able to be used as is for the next question. It is only when you are doing a scaffolded question that's got multiple steps to it, like I did in the previous example when we were calculating the final payment, then you keep every single decimal until the bitter end. Right, so that is what Bob owes when he's paid already 12 years, and that's a shocking amount of money. Please understand that it gets less and less, but you're basically paying a lot of interest at the beginning of a loan agreement like this. So he's only really paid 70,000 Rand off in 12 years worth of paying 4,000 Rand a month. Okay, if you want, you can figure out how much he's paid and how much of that is actually interest. Okay, so the next thing is, now we have the payment break. Calculate the amount outstanding, I've written the amount owed, on the loan after the 3-month payment break. Isn't that just what we worked out? It is not, because what we have to do is we've got to take the amount that we had as the balance outstanding, and we have to add 3 months of interest. Okay? Bearing in mind that at no moment during that time does any payment get made. And when there's no payments being made, you're going to use a lump sum to calculate interest. And so this one grows quicker. So I'm going to put my amount that I had there, my 429,000 odd. Okay, and I'm going to put that into a normal compound interest calculation for 3 months, which accumulates to 439. Look what happened in that amount of time. About 10 grand in 3 months. He would have paid off 12-ish, right, with that normal just over 4,000 Rand a month. But just 10,000 Rand is now added to the amount. Okay, that's the interest, guys. The amount of interest in 3 months on this loan was 10,000 Rand. Okay, so now what? So, option 1. What would his increased payments have to be in order to keep the loan's original period? So if he still wants to pay it off in 30 years, he's going to have to increase his payments. So now we're being asked for X. We need to find out what are the payments if you're still going to only have 30 years to pay this whole loan off. Now, it's not 30 more years. We want to still pay it off from the time he started to the time he finishes, right? So what's happening now is we've got to see, well, how many has he got left to pay? And then we're going to have to adjust the monthly payment to accommodate. Right, so we had the 360, okay. Then he paid off 144 payments, and then 3 months passed. What's left? We have 213 months left to pay. Okay, now we've got to get the payment divided up into 213 payments. My 439,000 odd. Okay, and I'm still keeping my rounded off numbers. Right, now that's going to go in to be paid off. I'm going to keep the original amount of time, okay, which means I've got to do it in the 213 months that are left. And my payment amount is going to go up. So that's the thing I'm calculating. Okay. So the short version is I'm going to take the 439,000, I'm going to times by the 0.09 over 12 and divide by this whole bracket to get that payment. Okay, I did hint here that the payments are going to have to increase. So if I get something that is lower than my original amount was the 4023. Okay, so it must be more than that, and it is. It is 4137,63. Not much more, hey? It's like just over $100 more. Okay. Doesn't seem like it's too bad, but I promise you most people will take option 2. Option 2 is extending the period of the loan. What I'm doing now is I'm finding out what the end value would be. So now I'm keeping my amount that I owe, okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, well, I don't want to pay that extra amount per month. I want to keep my 402311, and what I want to know is how long do I have to carry on paying that for? And this is going to be one of those log ones as well. Okay, so going through this process, I am going to multiply by the 0.09 on over 12 on the left. I'm going to divide by the 4023. Okay, so I'm just going to skip a few steps here. And when I get it into the log form, I'm going to need to log that large number there. And when I do that, I get a positive number for n, and I get 228, comma, a whole lot of things. Okay, so I'm going to have to round up again. It's about 229 payments. Okay, I worked out that the previous one would have needed to have been 213, right? Okay, so that's a bit more than that. If I minus my 213, I get 16 extra payments. Guys, that is a lot more. I mean, 18 would be a year and a half, so I'm going to have to pay for another year and 4 months in order to recoup the 3-month payment gap. So 3-month payment gap leads to 16-month payment extension. Isn't that interesting?